Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Thinkly Talks. We are very privileged to have with us Arjun Vaidya. Sorry, the session is starting a bit late, but I think Arjun was on his flight to Chennai and he got a bit delayed. But Arjun, great to have you over.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here finally.
That's great. So, just by way of a quick background, Arjun is a D2C, which is really known as direct to consumer founder and investor. He very interestingly built Dr. Vaidya's to become India's largest Ayurveda brand online and took it to an acquisition. He's now co-founder of V3 Ventures, investing in P3 pre-Series A and Series A rounds across the consumer ecosystem, which is D2C platform, consumer technology, and enablers. He's also the World Economic Forum Global Shaper and part of Brown University's Young Alumni Advisory Council. So, Arjun, quite a journey, I must say, right? I mean, you started off, as a professional working with Condé Nast, with let's say luxury brands like Hublot and De Beers, and then you finally moved across to becoming investment professional and eventually moved towards Ayurveda, right? So, just walk us through that journey.
Yeah, look, I think the journey towards Ayurveda started much before I actually professionally started working on it. I personally grew up with juvenile bronchitis, asthma. I grew up with pumps, nebulizers, inhalers, steroids. I come from a family of 150 years of Ayurveda legacy. And so as I was very young, I got on Ayurvedic treatment. Uh, my grandfather was a doctor. So the legacy of our business wasn't a business. It was an Ayurvedic clinic that my grandfather ran. He cured me of asthma by age 15 and allowed me to start playing cricket again. And so I promised him I'll do something with his legacy. That translated into just a thought process, spending time with my grandfather, learning about the science. I went to the US for my undergrad actually, and that's when sort of things started coming together. So I saw yoga being repackaged, right, with yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, and then I saw creation of a multi-billion-dollar industry in the US. And I started thinking to myself that it's amazing that yoga is global, but it's not so amazing that Indian companies are not part of that process, that journey. Right? And so I called my grandfather from campus and I said, we can't let the same happen with Ayurveda. And given that, I moved back to India in 2013. I got my first and only job out of college, working at a private equity fund, investing in consumer. And the moment my grandfather passed, I just sort of remembered my promise to him. And yeah, I quit my job to take on the Ayurveda legacy and create a brand.
Yeah. I think that's a great story. And I think especially with founders, I think one of the first question that you really ask somebody who's kind of started, on a journey as to what really motivated them. And I think in this case, it's something very personal to you. It's obviously something that as an asthma patient, you would have probably gone through the whole thing and then, seen the benefits of Ayurveda. And then I think having this family legacy, right? So I think there was a lot of purpose behind this whole mission.
Absolutely. And look, when you're building any startup, you face tough times, right? And in those tough times, I think having a deep sense of purpose really helps you get through it.
Absolutely. I think it was very wonderful said. I think as an entrepreneur, I kind of really can relate to that. So I think what I really found interesting, of course, you kind of talked about the fact about your promise to your grandfather, but how was it? I think if you look at today, most of the people set up D2C brands where they kind of build it up from ground up, right? In this case, you were obviously inheriting the legacy. So there was also a burden. At the same time, the generational gap that is there, with the other members of the family and to kind of make them think about building a brand online, competing in that way. How do you kind of navigate all of that, right?
I think a very great question. I will say that while Dr. Vaidya seemed like of my family business, it wasn't my family business. I inherited a clinic, a small manufacturing facility, and a clinic without its doctor, right? So it was like starting not from zero, but starting from one. And so I think we had the good fortune of a clean slate. Unfortunately, my grandfather was not there with me as well. But it allowed us to start with a clean slate and do what we thought we wanted to do. Yes, there was pressure, right? Because my grandfather was a legendary doctor. He saw 300 to 350 patients on a daily basis in that clinic. He had 12,000 patients on a monthly basis trying to him by a post. So he was probably one of India's most successful Ayurvedic doctors ever. But so there was that burden of taking forward that legacy and that pressure I put on myself. Nobody else put. I put on myself that if I'm using my grandfather's name and the company's name is my grandfather's name, I have to do something with it and do something meaningful with it. But I think other than that, we actually were fortunate to have a clean slate and do what we could. And so going online instead of going offline after failing offline. All of that was totally our decision, and that helped us.
Right. No, great. So, building on that, and there's a question from Shania, who's really trying to understand your whole, that, how did you eventually lead this to an acquisition? But I think building on top of that question, I was kind of impressed that if you look at it, there are other incumbents in the category, right? I mean, there are players like Himalayan Drug Company, to an extent, I would imagine to be a direct competition. There would be category competition from players, I would imagine, like Dabur, who may not necessarily be in that space, but, you kind of look at them. So, how did you kind of build this up in such a focused manner to actually eventually to make it such a large player? I mean, just walk us through some thoughts and what do you think were the critical success factors for you to come from nowhere? And I think it's kind of very impressive, having clarified that there was no family business in place, just a clinic and a manufacturing facility, right? So just walk us through that process.
See, Vivek, I think you mentioned Dabur and you mentioned Himalaya, but there was Patanjali, Vaidyanath, Zandu,
Absolutely.
Sandhu, Dhoot Papeshwar, and so many more companies as well. Honestly, I didn't view them as competition. I viewed them as aspiration. These are all $100 million type or plus businesses. And so I wouldn't be foolish enough to say that they are my competition. I did, although believe and still do believe that we did something differently from them. While they all focused on certain categories, ATL advertising, sales through offline channel, nobody had captured the consumer's mind, imagination, and thought process on the online channel. So what we did was repackage and rebrand Ayurveda to appeal to modern consumers using the power of digital. Here we were first movers. Here we won the market. We got a huge advantage. And still today, drvaidyas.com is the highest selling Ayurvedic platform in the country, far ahead of Patanjali and Vaidyanath and all of these other companies. So while we could not, and maybe sometime in the future, Dr. Vaidya's would reach there, but at the current stage, we could not directly compete with them offline. I think in the online space, far ahead.
So there's a question from Sameer, and he's really talking about, what are some of the hidden truths or lesser known aspects of the startup industry that entrepreneurs should be aware of, But actually, I would just like to link it to another thought process, See, if you look at it, the D2C brand as such is a pretty new category. I mean, probably you could say it's maybe a decade old, if you look at it globally and in India, right? Because if you really want to think about it, this whole new opportunity class called D2C, has come from a time when, if you look at it, brands were all seen as very capital intensive. I mean, you look at the legacy brands like, let's say, Unilever's and, P&G and Johnson and, so they're all huge brands which have access to capital. They had access to huge manufacturing capabilities. I would say the next fight was not so much about manufacturing, but it was about distribution. So brands like Asian Paint, ITC, obviously just won the battle because of the distribution, right? So in the background of all of this, how did this whole category of D2C brands suddenly start emerging? Because suddenly it seemed that people are pretty interested in have. So if you could just link this to Sameer's question and put that in a context.
Yeah, I'll answer them separately because they're quite different questions. I'll go with the first, the question that you answered, and then I'll answer Sameer's question after. So the question that you asked is, how did this whole D2C thing come about? And prior to the existence of this market or these types of businesses, business was very offline focused, had high upfront investment. Marketing was very expensive using ATL channels like outdoor or TV or newspaper. The upfront cost was very high. And so someone sitting in a tier 2, tier 3 city, or even in a young person like me in Bombay who had to compete with these large brands had no chance. I think D2C is a term that came from the West. When I started in 2017 with our website, we didn't even use the term D2C, right? So I think from that perspective, we as an industry started with just folks who were focused on building e-commerce or digital first brands. But I think digital business or D2C gives you a lot of advantages that help small brands actually fight the David Goliath battle, right? So one, the cost to start is not very high. You can operate a brand with a very low minimum order quantity and limited marketing budget that can scale incrementally, right? You can actually build a business or start a business with a 1 lakh rupee, 2 lakh rupee, 3 lakh rupee marketing spend per month, which you can't do in the offline space. Even listing of your products on marketplaces, which is the equivalent of modern trade, costs nothing. Creation of a website as opposed to putting your product in general trade, is much cheaper because you have a capex of 50,000 rupees to 3-4 lakh rupees to get the website up and running, but that's about it, right? So I think the great part about D2C business allows what we call democratization. The other amazing part about D2C business is it allows you to build a business in a niche. What do I mean by this? I mean that if you think about a business called M Caffeine, it's a caffeine based cosmetics business. Now, if they went into distribution 7 years ago or 6 years ago when they started, they would find 10,000 customers in Bombay, 5,000 customers in Gurgaon, 10,000 customers in Delhi, 5,000 customers in Bangalore. And so, there, if they place their product in offline distribution, the density of customers per store would not be enough for the business to make sense. But now in online, they found in the first year an addressable market of 1 lakh customers across India. They may have been in small pockets, but actually using one warehouse and one distribution channel, they're able to reach all those customers. So aggregate the number is 1 lakh or 2 lakh or 5 lakh or 10 lakh, but it's a sparse distribution in a large country like India. And so offline distribution to start off may not be the right way to build in niche spaces. So I think that's the great part about D2C business. It allows young people with or smaller businesses or people with not so much background to actually play in spaces where there are really large players like Ayurveda in our example, and actually start something of scale and relevance. Right. The greatest example for me about this is Attenborough. In the fan space where they're real behemoths, Attenborough has built 1,000 CR business now. And nobody would have believed this was possible 5-7 years back, right? Now, I think taking the other question on hidden dark secrets about the startup ecosystem, I will say the biggest hidden dark secret about the startup ecosystem is that it's romanticized through news, media, etc., all of that. And it seems like this really sexy profession where, you see LinkedIn posts and Instagram reels motivating you and you think it's just going to be amazing and you're going to have Elon Musk type experience driving a Ferrari, etc. That's great. It's possible if you make the outcome happen. But entrepreneurship is a really hard journey. It's a roller coaster ride that honestly has a lot of downs, some ups, but a lot of downs. And being able to fight these downs with grit and resilience and really come above that, I think that's the hallmark of a really good entrepreneur. We talk a lot about successes because that's but natural, right? That we talk about successes. But I think it's riddled with failure, and being able to deal with that failure with a smile on your face and thick skin and get up and fight again is really important. The skill of the best entrepreneurs I've seen.
Right. I think great points, and especially like they say, like a successful guy said, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success, right? I mean,
Correct.
People don't see that part of the journey,
Correct.
the fortitude required to just be there and persevere. And I think to your
Absolutely.
other point, like 99% of startups fail, right? Nobody really talks about it, but there's a lot of failure that really happens in this journey, which I think only an entrepreneur is probably aware of, right?
Correct.
So great points, Arjun. But just kind of moving along on my earlier point, I kind of get from what you're saying that how the D2C brands are coming of vogue now because of it's a new phenomena. It's democratizing the whole access to market. Niches are very interesting. Going online first is a very interesting play in some categories. But just want to kind of just get your maybe get your your investment your investor kind of hat. How does one decide which D2C brand is going to win in a new category? Because I think if you were to think of it, at once upon a time, like I said, capital, distribution, and all were like your critical success factors, right? But today you have like when you look at categories, like let's say if you look at cosmetics or personal hygiene or fashion, right? I mean, everybody seems to be getting the same products toll manufactured, or they're probably importing stuff from China. All of them end up distributing through a Flipkart, Amazon, Zeppo, Zepto, Insta, right? All of them access to the same digital advertising, like or an SEO spend, like spending 50% of the VC raised money and in Google and Facebook and stuff like that, right? So when you're kind of looking at one of these spaces, how do you differentiate that which one of them is going to be really the winner out there, right? Because you really don't see a differentiator to that sense, right? So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it's a question that people are asking a lot about now. They're saying it's actually so easy to launch a D2C brand. Just go to a contract manufacturer and you start. In certain categories, that is possible. Like you take personal care or cosmetics, or in certain parts of food as well. In health and wellness, a little bit harder because there is usually some uniqueness in products. In fashion, it's very easy. For example, if you're launching a brand doing t-shirts, we're launching a brand doing women's dresses, etc., all of that, there is enough supply chain available in India. So in these spaces as well, why does a Mamaearth stand out, or a Boat stand out, or a Wow Skin Science stand out, right? The reason they stand out is because they are something more than just what everybody else has. And so the very important concept to think about when you're thinking about consumer brands is moat. What is moat? Moat is that body of water around a uh, moat is that body of water around a fort or a castle, that is that
Right.
additional line of defense, right? And if you think about today's construct, what I'm trying to tell you is that there should be some level of defensibility. Now, this defensibility could be form factor. Like, for example, Dr. Vaidya has launched Chyawanprash toffees called Chakash. That form factor was different from Chyawanprash. It could be price, like Jio entered the market and offered the cheapest cell phone connections and now is offering IPL free. And so you'll get many more users than Hotstar or Amazon Prime, etc., or Netflix, right? It could be ingredient story, right? And caffeine has caffeine-based cosmetics. It could be convenience. I am using these headphones, they're AirPods, they're 10 times the price of boat AirDopes. But the convenience of this direct connection with my iPhone makes me okay to pay that 10x increase, right? So I'm giving you examples of ways that you can make your brand cut through the clutter, because in today's environment, different from 5 years ago when I started, or 6 years ago when I started, there is, in depending on the space that you operate in, 2x, 3x, 5x, even 10x the amount of competition than when I started. And so being able to cut through the clutter and really occupy some share in the consumer's mind is really important.
So, Arjun, I'm just struggling to keep up with the chat because I think this whole chat is kind of lit right now, asking questions. So I'm just going to try and conflate some questions and we can kind of
Sure.
double down there. Apologize to the community. I'm not able to necessarily pick up all your names, but just moving forward, I think some of the thoughts that people are trying to understand is, how can you, if you were to just double click on marketing, because I think, like we said, toll manufacture, contract manufacturing is easy. Maybe you kind of differentiate on the form factor that you talked about in your previous point, right? But ultimately, it just comes down towards acquisition. So what are the kind of marketing strategies and channel strategies that you think people can do differently, in the way? Because, and also, I think like, whenever you invest, let's say, whenever you kind of evaluate a proposal, there's always this tendency of investors kind of see that what percentage of it is coming through your own captive channel, through your own website versus a Flipkart and Amazon, right? I mean, that's again a big debate because the take rates of these platforms is very high, right? So, how should somebody think about it? Is building a brand today? What can you do differently? How can you think about keeping the CACs low and stuff like that?
Yeah. I'll give you a simple answer to this question. I built a brand on performance marketing, right? I think at that time in 2017, 2018, when the competition was low and I was probably the only guy who was trying Ayurveda online was possible. Today, just using performance marketing leads to a law of diminishing marginal utility. As you keep spending more, your ROS goes lower. As your ROS goes lower, the efficiency of your ads and your business in general becomes in question, right? So I think performance marketing is a very strong channel. Using Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads is very helpful if they're conversion focused for D2C brands, but it cannot be done in isolation any longer. So I think the way I tell brands to think today is a mix of performance and brand. What do I mean by brand? I mean non-conversion driven channels of marketing, which could be content, which could be community, and you guys do this really well. It could be video production, it could be connection with influencers, etc. All of that. There should be a strict, uniform, and consistent allocation of budget outside of performance. The way I like to do it is I say allocate a percentage of your budget outside of performance marketing. So that percentage of your budget could be 15%, 20%, whatever that is, but that budget should be consistent for a 6 to 9 month period. And it should increase as your marketing spend increases. What do I mean? I mean, if you have a 20% budget and your marketing spend is 100 rupees, you spend 20 rupees on brand. Now, when your marketing budget becomes 120 rupees, you don't spend 20, you spend 24 on brand, right? So that percentage share should remain consistent. If you're able to do this, you will get some additional efficiency in your performance marketing ads because your brand recall will increase. So the efficiency of your top of funnel will increase. And so when a customer sees your ads, their likelihood to click through or to purchase is higher.
Yeah, in fact, yesterday we had a very interesting chat with Amin Dadiali, who was talking about, and I think we kind of, explored the same point that because everything is so measurable, I think, we tend to use digital as for performance largely. I mean, you probably put 120% of your budget on performance, right? But I think that's where you kind of end up losing out on building brands per se, because it's not really about discounts and a call to action. It's about building the community, building the content. I think that starts becoming even a more and more important place. Right? I mean, that's the essence of what you would kind of concur with, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, there's a question from Sarah Malik, and she said that let's get down to the nitty-gritty of startup life. What are your go-to strategies for startups trying to hustle their way into funding and conquer the jungle of fundraising?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I will give you some tips to crack your investor meeting or your first investor meeting, right? I think the first thing is, like, in our I met like thousands of startups. Know who you're meeting, do your research on that person, and know what they have invested in. Like, I sometimes go into meetings with founders who have literally never even Googled my name, right? Or checked my LinkedIn profile. And I think that level of preparedness already throws the investor off, right? So if you have context into the person you have, and today with digital media, you can check out the person on Google, you can check out the person on YouTube, you can check out the person on LinkedIn, maybe you can check their social media handles if they have any and they're accessible to you. And do your research on that person prior to going into the meeting so that you're prepared. Second, be very prepared with your business presentation through a deck or however you'd like to do it, Notion doc, etc. But also be prepared for questions. So if you've done a mock pitch before, you can actually preempt the questions and have answers in relation to those questions. Number three, any conversation should be a conversation and a dialogue, not a monologue. So ensure that you're engaging with the person, you're actually having a conversation with the person, you're allowing them to ask their questions. The worst thing you can do is in a 45-minute block, spend 42 minutes talking, and then at the last 3 minutes, ask if the person has any questions. And the last thing is leave every meeting with a follow-up. Say, hey, should I reach back out to you in a week? Should I reconnect with you? If it's too early, can I send you a monthly email, etc., etc. Right? So I think every meeting should be left with a follow-up. So just recapping the 4 tips: go prepared in relation to the person you're meeting. Go prepared in relation to your business pitch and preempt questions. Ensure you have a dialogue and not a monologue. And then leave every meeting with a takeaway, follow-up, or call to action.
So I think for everybody in the community who's looking to kind of reach out to Arjun out here, clear 4 takeaways to kind of ensure that you have a more effective meeting with Arjun if you reach out, right? Yeah. So Arjun, could you also share a memorable moment from your journey? I mean, that's a question from Mahana. As a founder and investor, that had a profound impact on your approach towards startups. Something that you personally experienced and what?
See, the great part about startups, right, is that you actually get to see in reality your dreams coming true. Right? What do I mean by that? I mean, one day I dreamt that I'll get 10 orders a day, then I got 10. Then I dreamt I'll get 100 orders a day, I got 100. Then I dreamt that one day people will know my brand and know me for my brand, and that happened, right? So I think the challenge with startups is that sometimes it takes longer than you wanted to take, and it took longer for us. It took 2.5 years for us to hit product market fit. But then we started doing reasonably well, and we started doing 50 orders a day, and people started noticing the brand, etc. All of that, but still, as an entrepreneur, because you've been through such tough times that you think actually nobody knows me, and in my office everybody knows me, my friend circle everybody knows me. But I used to always wear a Dr Vaidya's t-shirt wherever I went, right? Wherever I was traveling, etc. All of that to work. So today you see me wearing my B3 Ventures t-shirt. I'll always wear this. You'll see me every day in a different color of this t-shirt. So I was going on a flight to Bangalore, and I remember I got onto the plane and I was sitting on my seat on an aisle seat, and the guy in the aisle seat next to me was like, hey, are you from Dr. Vaidya's? So I said, yeah, I'm from Dr. Vaidya's. Then he pulled up his phone and he said, I've heard great things about this one product. And he showed me a picture of a product Havu built. And he said, I run a chemist shop in a place called Vijayanagar near Hampi. And I really want to source this product. Can you please connect me to your boss? And then I said, okay, why do you like the product? He's like, I've been hearing great things about this brand. Everybody's talking about it. Seems to be disrupting the Ayurveda space, etc. All of that. And then I told him, by the way, I'm the founder of the company, etc. And he was happy to meet. But that was the first time that I felt my brand was actually bigger than what I thought it was, and was actually getting noticed. And that was a really special, memorable moment. Another one I can think of is, Jeff Bezos came to India in Jan 2020 for the first Amazon Sambhav. And we were one of the 10 brands that were given an award. We were given an award called Youth SMB of the Year. And he gave me that award. And I came back to Bombay after that quick trip to Delhi. And I gave that award to my grandmom. My grandmother is not alive at this time. And she just smiled and said, "Your grandma would have been really proud." And I think that moment will never leave me, actually.
Beautiful. I think as founders, we actually live for these few moments, right? I mean,
Correct.
whether you like it or not, you're looking for validation that you're on the right path.
Correct.
And I think when a genuine award or a recognition with a stranger is, with a random stranger, that can really bring that smile to your face and, may help you double down your journey.
Correct.
Wonderful. Very lovely listening to all of this. Just want to kind of think about, so we obviously are thinking about the 0 to 1 space, like, about how do we kind of, get the startup journey going. But what would you say about, let's say, the brands which have become big? I mean, where do you see the roadblocks happening? For example, when they hit the $10 million mark, like, 80 to 100
Yeah.
crores. I think that seems to be a ceiling. In fact, I've kind of noticed that, like if you look at cosmetics, you have multiple brands which have kind of just run past 100 crores. But if you look at personal hygiene, sanitary ware, and all that stuff, like, you see the brands have kind of, kind of somewhere, hit a level of around 40 to 50 crores, right? Some thoughts around that. What are the possible roadblocks?
Yeah, look, I think there is a ceiling. It could be 40 crore, 100 crore, 200 crore, where brands will hit a ceiling online and they have to start thinking like they're not just a D2C brand or new age brand or disruptor brand. They're now a brand in the larger ecosystem of brands that will now occupy a space in relation to the legacy players. And so you have to think about new channel strategy. You have to think about new product strategy. You have to think of sort of omni-channel strategy, etc. All of that. I think the exciting part about our brands in the sort of new age disruptive space is we're actually having these conversations now. 5 years ago, we were not even thinking about this. 100 crore was this like far away imaginary benchmark that we dreamt of reaching. And then a lot of our brands have shattered this benchmark. So I think it's a good thing. But I think as you cross that benchmark, whether it's 5, 10, $15 million a year, you got to start thinking like any other brand will. And I think that thought process of going offline, building new teams, thinking differently is what all our brands are grappling with today. We've reached the medium-sized state.
And I think this, if you were to just extend this point further, what do you see will happen in D2C over the next 3 to 5 years? What are the trends that we could actually look at? Maybe the new founders, jumping.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sort of think about and wrap up. So I think personally, there are many things that will happen, right? The first thing I will say is omni-channel is a reality. As our brands grow bigger and as offline has come back after COVID, all of our brands will have to start thinking omni-channel at a certain stage, right? The second thing is that customers have become used to a very heightened experience. And so fast delivery, exceptional post-order communication, dealing with grievances in the right way has become the norm. And it's a bare minimum you have to do. The third thing is delivery experience cannot be 1 week, 2 weeks any longer. If you take more than 2 days to deliver in a metro, you're in trouble and your RTO rates will increase. The fourth thing I would say is that truly Indian brands will start going global and not just Indian indigenous category brands. So Indian indigenous category brands are like Ayurveda, yoga, spices, those kind of tea, those kind of things are best made in India. So obviously they'll go global, but you will see like brands in toys and brands in fashion and brands in health and in wellness genuinely go global and occupy foreign shelves. So those are four things. And the fifth thing I would say is that you will see as brands cross this 100, 200 crore mark, larger FMCG conglomerates, both Indian and global, will start taking notice and acquiring businesses like that, like Dr. Vaidya's, and like Plix and like Beardo, and like Yoga Bar. You will see a lot of these larger players understand the need to think in a new age disruptive manner and acquire these players. So I think these are 5 trends for D2C that I see going forward over the next 3 to 5 years that hopefully will take our industry into a new direction.
Right. So Arjun, you've been a founder, you're now an investor. What do you think is really the secret sauce that really happens in the West, especially in the Valley, which allows people to kind of imagine these brands, whether it's D2C brand or of course tech companies, and they build out of the Valley, but they build it for the world, right? And they kind of go global. I mean, what do you think is really, different out there, which allows, and I think you touched upon it's point number 3 or 4, you talked about Indian brands will go global. But yeah.
Look, I think the creation of an ecosystem is what allows this, right? So if you see people around you and are able to do it, then you believe it's a possibility. I think the culture of innovation has been there for a little bit longer than it's been here, but I'm seeing lots of sort of green shoots of that happening here. I think for us to progress as a nation, we need to ensure that there is not just Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore or Bombay, NCR, and Bangalore as startup hubs. We need to all do our bit to nurture the Chennais and the Hyderabad's and the Jaipurs and the Kochis and the Bhopals and the Bhubaneswars and the Surats and the Ahmedabads of our country to create genuine startup hubs so that entrepreneurs in these regions don't have to move to Bangalore to scale. And if we genuinely are able to create this culture of innovation in 20, 30, 50 cities in our country, trust me, we'll leave the valley way behind.
There's a question here from Arman who says, like, Forbes Asia recognized you as one of the 30 under 30, right? Can you talk about the impact the recognition had on your career and the way you think about, things now?
Yeah, I think it was a big moment for us because our work was being recognized by a body like Forbes. And we were the first Ayurveda brand ever to be featured in this list. And so it gave a lot of credibility to the business, which it didn't have at that time, and gave a lot of trust to the business. Having said that, I do believe that awards have become a little bit commoditized now. And so I think as a founder, yes, these things help and they are great validation to your work, but it's not the only thing you need to be focused on.
That's true. I think it's good if the accolades come along, but if you start focusing on that, you have a problem, right? There's an interesting question as we move towards a close. Jason is asking that, hey Arjun, if you had a time machine, what is that one thing that you would have gone back and changed about your approach, right?
I think it would be pre-Dr. Vaidya's. I'll tell you one pre-Dr. Vaidya's and one during Dr. Vaidya's. Pre-Dr. Vaidya's, it would take me back to college when I shied away from taking a computer science class in college because it was too hard. I didn't realize the importance of tech and what it would do, and I would build an e-commerce business. And so I would have taken that sort of computer science 100 class at Brown that I started and then left in 1 week because I said it's too hard. And Dr. Vaidya's, I think what would I have done earlier, I think I would have hired a sort of stronger team earlier. I think we did a lot of things on our own for a very long time. And I think that may have sort of reduced the pace of growth of our business earlier.
Right. Yeah, I think the amount of focus now on really being tech oriented now, it's like, it's unbelievable. In fact, I think there was this great chat that I saw, I think, I forget, was it with which, but, he just kind of talked about the fact that how we are moving to a world where, everybody needs to be technology oriented. All founders need to be technology oriented. Like, so he said the edge that you have, if I have a 3-man team and all 3 can code, and then have a 2-man team and one of them can't code. He said that's just the disproportionate advantage, when you're literally working out of the garage is really next level, right? But so I think in terms of any thoughts on that?
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Arjun, as we kind of come towards the close of this, I think you've obviously touched upon the funding bit and everything, but I think would really love to hear some, words of wisdom, and advice to the people who are contemplating about starting a D2C brand, right in terms of, conceptualizing, thinking of categories, thinking about when they should look at the investment, how they should think about their whole cash flow. If you could just kind of walk us through a mini workshop, over the next couple of minutes, I think that will be a great way to kind of, get from you.
I think it's really hard to do it in a couple of minutes, honestly, but let me try. I think
we'd love to have you back for a longer session, but yeah.
Yeah.
How much time? Yeah.
Some steps that I would say is, when you start, you've got to think of a product that really solves a problem, and then think of why you have a right to win there. Then you've got to go into creating a brand that's more than a logo. Once you have your product out in the market, you've got to launch a conversion-friendly website. That's your channel of acquisition. Acquire customers across channels, whether it's brand, SEO, or performance marketing. Create an efficient operations infrastructure to deliver, dispatch, and communicate with the customers after the order is delivered. Retention is the secret sauce of D2C. So after the order is delivered, get the customers back and back and back. And finally, build a culture for a real fast scale so that you can take advantage of the fact that you're digital and agile.
So, there's never a silver bullet, but if you were to think about a silver bullet, I think retention would probably be one of the most important.
It's the secret sauce of D2C, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your mind, when you look at various brands at different stages, like, like a 0 to 5 crore, 5 to, let's say, 20, 50 crores, 100 crore plus, which are the brands that you think are doing a great job right now? Any observations?
I think there are so many brands. It's like hundreds of brands are doing a great job. I I'm a junkie for D2C products. So I think so many.
Right. And I think as we're going to progress, I think over the next 5 years, the share of the buying basket of the consumer is just going to expand considerably, right?
Absolutely.
From like zero to probably, where do you think it's going to be? I mean, when you look at it, what do you think will eventually be in the percentage of the buying basket of a consumer?
Tough to say, honestly, how much D2C brands will occupy. I think if we can take 20% market share from legacy brands, we've done a great job. But we have a long way to go.
Right. No, great. I think, Arjun, it was wonderful having you over. I really
My
enjoyed this
pleasure,
whole
Vivek.
conversation. I
Thank
learned
you.
a lot, and I'm sure the
Thank you so
community would have
much.
been. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.